Today we're going to talk about stairs, how to measure them and how to draw them in a conventional way. You'll see what I mean when we start doing the drawing. We are going to come back to stairs at some point at a later date when we talk about section drawings being cut vertically through the building, but today I'm really just going to focus on plan drawings. So I'll go out and measure a little bit and then come back here and we'll do the drawings. So here I am, I'm right outside my office, which is what I just drew before in the earlier video. And I've walked around this space and a little bit upstairs and have made my rough drawing. Now I need to just take some measurements, I'll go through doing that, and then bring all of that back into the office. One thing I do want to say about stairs is that it is important when you're making the rough drawing to be as accurate as possible and to count the number of risers, we would call them. The riser is the part that goes up and the tread is what goes back, okay? So we need to count all of those and make sure that that is reasonably accurate in our drawing. Another thing that is worth knowing about stairs is that it is highly unusual that any of the stairs in a given run of stairs that we're looking at would be different dimensions. So if you measure one, all of them are going to be the same. So one more thing I want to say here before I go inside. You'll notice that these stairs go up, but they don't go down right here. That's often the case, that you have stairs that sort of circulate around each other in a spiral pattern. We'll talk about that when I make the drawing, about what to do if you only have stairs that go up, or what to do if you have stairs that go up on one side and down on the other. And here we are back at the drawing table where I'm going to transfer my visual notes here to a piece of trace, and I'll be using the same scale that I used on the previous drawing because the stair that I'm going to be drawing is actually just right on the other side of that wall. So in the end I'll be able to combine those two drawings into this kind of back corner of Art and Architecture South. So I have most of the drawing pretty well roughed out. Over here on these exterior stairs, I just measured each one and then drew the lines. What I'm going to do over here instead is I know the bottom riser line and I know where the top riser line both are. Okay, let me zoom in on this. So because I had measured these from adjacent walls and those kind of things, I've established where they are. Now, I also know how many riser lines there are. And I also know that they're the same dimension in this direction. So one thing I can do is use my scale in a simple way to evenly distribute, a certain number of lines across a certain distance. So I'll show how that's done. Now, I know that there are 10 of these lines. And so I've got one line here and another line there. So I need to evenly distribute the correct number of spaces here between these two. So 2 plus 8 equals 10. And so there's going to be 8 lines. 8 lines, but 9 spaces between those lines, okay? I don't want this to get super confusing or anything, but you know, if we count one, or here, let me show with this. If we count, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines, and we count in between them, the spaces are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces. So we come back here to our scale, and it doesn't really matter which scale we use. What we want to find is some scale where we can distribute 9 spaces between those two lines and then just mark where those are. And I usually do that diagonally. So let me see here. This one might work now. So I actually just found it's the same scale I'm working at, but what I was looking for would be from 0 to 9. I'm trying to determine 9 spaces, so I just put it at a diagonal where the 0 is aligned with this line and the 9 is aligned with that one. And then holding this in place, I can come in here and make a mark as well as I can at each of those lines right there. Now, if I draw lines at each of those marks, I will have 9 spaces. And there we go. So I could have measured each of these at 11 inches. Instead, I just established the top and the bottom and used a convenient scale that could give me 9 spaces between the top line and the bottom line, and then marked those lines and then drew them in. I wasn't super precise with that, but close enough for now. So now that I've got pretty much everything laid out here, I'm just going to go through like I did last time and add some line weights so that it's clear what's being cut through in terms of walls and what is not. I'll also add door swings and, well, there's not really any windows to speak of here, but I'll just sort of complete the drawing and then come back and talk a little bit more about how we show stairs. What I'm doing right now is actually adding some curves to these interior walls. I didn't show that on the video, but if you do go walk into that stair hall right next to my office, you'll see that these corners actually curve up at that landing. So that's what I was drawing right there. You'll see it in the finished drawing. The other thing I'm adding here is just a light line on the exterior where there is a sort of little projecting piece of stone out there. And we're good. Now I'm going to move the camera here and we'll talk a little bit about these stairs. When we're making floor plans, the basic conventional assumption is that we're slicing through the building somewhere around 3 feet up from the floor. That's a convention, it's nothing super specific. But what that means is these stairs going up would be cut off as they go up, if we're really literally cutting through the building, if we think about it that way. The convention to show that can be seen here, where we put a thin slash and like a little squiggle right in the middle. That is an indicator that something is going up and we're basically slicing through it. And it either continues up or goes down, etc. So how we do that, I'll just show real quickly here. You know, a 30 or 60 degree angle is usually fine for that. And kind of midway along this run of stairs will work. So I'm going to give myself a quick little guideline and then just draw a little squiggle right there and then kind of firm up that guideline a little bit. Or cut line, we would call this. That's a cut line. And then, in this case, these stairs only go up. As I said out there, they don't go down and then back around. There's an office below them. So they only go up. In that case, I wouldn't actually even show these lines. I would show these, and I might make those a little bit kind of cleaner, not thicker, but clearer. Nice and crisp and thin, but clearer than I've drawn them. I just kind of drew them as a guideline before. Whoops. And that basically shows that these things go up. They go up and then disappear. I could actually literally erase these ones up above, and then it would be clear that these are going up because they go up and they get cut off in this plan. If these were going down, if there was another set of stairs right here that was going down adjacent to this set, which is not uncommon, up by the front office, that's the case. There's a set of stairs going up and one going down. If these were to be going down and then wrapping around and continuing down, then when we cut this flight that's going up, the ones below it become visible. And in that case, we would show these stair lines. So that's something to look at no matter what stairs you're working on. If they sort of overlap each other, one going up and one coming down directly below it, then we would see both of those sets of stairs. If one is only going up and we don't know what is below it, or there's empty space below it, we only show those stairs going up to a cut line midway along that run, and then we call it good. Zooming back out a little bit, just wanted to kind of show the completed drawing, and also make note of the fact that the drawing that we did before, move my parallel bar out of the way, I actually redid this drawing so that it would match the scale of this. I should have just done this drawing at the same scale as the first time I did my office, but I redid this one quickly, and if we did everything right, then you'll notice that this all starts to line up. And so I've got two pieces of trace paper, one showing the drawing of my office, the other showing these stairs out here. And now I could really put a third piece of trace over this and then trace over all of it and unify this drawing with this drawing. That's one of the great things about trace paper, is you can do sort of partial drawings, focus on what you need to focus on, and then when you're ready you can tape this down right over the top of the other one, make sure everything aligns, and then put another piece of trace down, tape that one down, and then you can trace everything up. It's one of the great things about trace paper. One more bit of information I want to add to the end of this video has to do with how we draw things that are overhead. So for example, there is this beam that runs all the way through this space in Art and Architecture North. It's carried by these columns. You would draw the columns as though you would draw walls. They're just square. But the beams above, especially this big prominent one that runs in this direction, that wants to be drawn with a dash line, and I'll show how to do that. Another place where we would want to draw a dash line overhead is to represent things like the overhanging roof outside Art and Architecture North. We're not going to know exactly how far it projects, but you can take a good look and make a reasonable estimate at how far these roofs actually project out from the building, and you'll want to draw dash lines for those in the plan. In case you're wondering, it is not typical to draw dash lines over the heads of doors. The door swing takes the place of that. It tells us that it's a door opening, and we can understand that. Air ducts are often hanging from ceilings, but in this case, this is an air duct that's actually built in. And so I would draw dash lines that define the outer edges of this feature in Art and Architecture South. Large framed openings like these might be another case where I would be tempted to draw a dash line over the top, because they're not ordinary door openings. They're big kind of framed openings in the wall. And that header that comes across the top there, you might want to indicate that that's there in the plan. One more thing that I'd like to do before I remove this drawing from my board is talk about the overhead. Remember I pointed out with my camera out there that there is a projecting roof at the exterior of Art and Architecture South. So I want to show a quick way to draw that. Again, you're not going to climb the face of the building and measure how far that projects. So we're going to kind of take a guess, and I'm going to guess that that's about 2 or 3 feet of projection. I'll say 2'6". So I'll just split the difference there. And I'm going to give myself a little, very light guideline and extend it out past this corner. Another thing I'd like to do, hopefully it's visible in the video there, is I just drew a 45-degree angle here at this corner. That helped me to turn that corner. If you want to, if you've got 2 parallel lines, like any of these are parallel lines, and you want to turn the corner and have those lines be the same distance from one another here, and then turning the corner and having that happen here, carrying a 45-degree line out, you then see where that crosses, draw another line, and we now know that this line and this line are the same distance apart as this line and this line. Simple geometry, okay? But in terms of a dash line, we can do it a couple of different ways. One way is just to draw each dash individually. Another way would be to draw a line and then erase the spaces between the dashes. I think this way is better. It's quicker, it's more direct, you're not erasing. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that these dashes want to be roughly the same length, and the spaces between them want to be roughly the same length. And the dashes, the actual lines, want to be at least a bit wider, or excuse me, longer than the spaces between. So I might have made those a little bit long. Let's do another one here that is pretty standard. One of the things we're trying to do is make it clear that this is a continuous line. And if we were to do it where the dashes were really small and maybe spaced out in an odd way, then that doesn't appear to be as continuous as this one and this one. So these are the conventional ways to draw dash lines. And anything overhead, the edges of anything overhead, should get a dash line. I'll show one more example of that. So zooming in here, if you recall what I was showing in Art and Architecture North, the columns and their relationship to the beams up above, I'm just going to draw 2 guidelines in that direction. I'm going to use my little geometric way with a 45-degree angle of making a simple square. There's my square, and I know from experience that those columns are squares, but you would want to go and measure them to be sure. And then again, we're showing a column as being cut through in the same way that we would show walls being cut through, so it gets a heavy line. And then the beam up above, if it aligns with the edge of that column, then away we go, drawing a dash line like that, and a dash line on this side. I'm making these maybe a little bit darker than I need to so that they appear clearly on the video. Dash lines above want to be a thin line, but a nice crisp line. And you see the difference there. That's what I'm talking about. These lines are not a lot wider than these lines, my guidelines, but they're darker, they're crisper. Okay, and that's really what we're going after. Whereas the line of, you know, the columns and the walls, that line is a little bit heavier, thicker. It's a heavier line weight. And that draws the distinction between, you know, a stair line, which is a thin line, or a guide line like that, or a dash line up above. Just one more to draw here. The other thing, if I'm doing dash lines adjacent to one another, generally speaking, I want them to align with each other. It's not a big deal, but it does add a kind of cleanness to the drawing, a kind of, well, what am I trying to say? A kind of consistency to the drawing. Instead of the dash lines kind of not matching up, if you can, make them more or less match up. You don't want to be measuring them, that takes too much time, but just eyeballing it, okay? One other issue I'm going to tack onto this video has to do with plumbing fixtures. Architecture, interior design, we need to deal with bathrooms, right? Male and female or gender neutral. But basically what you want to do is make sure nobody's in the bathroom, maybe work in teams, and you can come in and measure as long as no one's in there, right? But we do want to see kind of what the plumbing fixtures are, and then add those to our drawing as well as possible. We also want to be thinking about things like these partitions, the bathroom stalls. Those would want to be drawn in your drawing as well. So I'll show just a couple of quick examples of how those kinds of things can look in plan, and there are other examples in your textbook and numerous examples online as well. And finally, just to draw some really quick examples of some plumbing fixtures here. I'm not measuring anything here because I'm just trying to kind of wrap up this video. And let's assume that this is our bathroom stall here, like so, and you know, typically the door swings in, and with a bathroom it's pretty common to show that as just sort of a 45-degree line that swings in, and then if I find the appropriate circle here to show our door swing, like so. So that's basically our toilet stall. And then, you know, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You could just sort of use a circle template. It's not really that critical. You could even just sort of freehand it if you do it sort of carefully, even though toilet bowls are generally not perfect circles, but rather ovals. Anyway, that's a simple way of showing a toilet. A sink can be just kind of a basic rectangle, or a couple of rectangles, I should say, on the wall, because we're showing the basin itself and then, you know, the sink within the basin. And then maybe just a quick little circle, whoops, that indicates, you know, that that's a drain. Really simple, don't overthink it. They do make templates. You know, not this one doesn't, but they do make templates for these kinds of things. I don't think they're really that necessary. Also, look to your textbook for examples of how to draw these things as well. Fucking hell. So that's going to do it for now. I realize I didn't cover every single thing that you might need to know how to draw in plan, but stairs, things that are overhead, plumbing fixtures, those are pretty critical. If you do have other things that you have questions about, I'd refer you to the textbook, or by all means put a comment right below, and I'll do what I can to respond to that and maybe create another quick video to talk about those issues. I hope this helps, and I will see you in class.